Hey, this is Mr. S, and today we're talking about human impacts on wetlands and mangroves. The objectives and skills that we're going over are listed here. You can read through them, but the big thing is trying to propose environmental solutions. We'll be talking about wetlands and what they are and what threats there are to wetlands. Alright, so wetlands are areas where the soil is submerged in water for all or part of the year. And an important thing that we think about is the vegetation, that are plants that you can see in the diagram here that are going to have the roots anchored in the soil. But part of the plant extends up and out of the water, and these plants are going to be adapted to living in these conditions. So most plants cannot survive with their roots totally submerged in the water. They wouldn't be able to get the oxygen they need. And remember that plants on the land can run out of oxygen really easily, so these are very special plants that live in these wetland habitats, and they're adapted for that. And so, why are they so important? There's a variety of reasons why they're so important. A lot of ecosystem services that there are. Things like provisioning, so habitats for animals and plant food, so we get a lot of food and resources from these areas that are super important. They regulate how much water goes into our groundwater, so how much water we're able to access in the aquifers and such. And when there are floods, they can act as a buffer so that places don't get as flooded, as well as they store a lot of CO2 and greenhouse gases. They're also supporting the ecosystem by offering water filtration, so cleaning the water and filtering it, habitats for pollinators and insects, cycling nutrients like we've been learning about phosphorus and nitrogen, as well as a way to control pests on farms and in areas. And then also they're really important for tourism, revenue, fishing, camping, and medical research. So like culturally, they're very important too. All right, and there's a lot of threats to wetlands as a result of human activities. We've talked about nutrient pollution, but there are other pollutants like motor oil that drips into our cars onto the pavement, and then it all drains into the wetlands. Pesticides from agricultural fields that are toxic, and we can have endocrine disruptors that we'll be learning more about, that are medical compounds that pass through the body or don't flush through the toilet properly, and we can also develop them by building a lot of buildings and developments and apartments, right? So agricultural land is a huge one. So many of our wetlands, which have a lot of biodiversity and species, were paved over for development. And then there's also water diversion upstream for flood control. So like I said, agriculture, the water gets diverted, or drinking water. You can see down here in the Everglades, before there was this major drainage, the water flowed, right, historically to all these different areas. And now it's only flowing to one major canal, and all of these places are being diverted into human settlements and then into dams for flood control and hydroelectric energy, right? And then overfishing is a huge thing. Obviously disrupts the food web, and there's a decrease in fish predators and increase in prey that throws everything off. So those are the major threats. Be sure to take note of the few major ones that you can think of there for your notes. And here are some solutions to watershed pollutants. So I will let you go over these, but making sure that animal wastes are processed and that human wastes are processed are super important. Removing nutrients from our groundwater In the developed world, this is a pretty common practice. Making sure enough water goes back into the groundwater, making sure that the crops are actually taking in the nutrients and the manures are processed so that they're not leaching into the water. Cover crops really help, so areas where there's different kinds of crops planted that are absorbing it. So there's a huge amount of ecosystem services. Climate regulation is huge. These are super important for climate change. And you'll watch a video about mangroves. They're worth quite a bit of money due to like resources and all of the protection from storms. They're very important to protect the land against storms and buffer storms that we're having more of with climate change. They filter water, tourism, fisheries, people, livelihoods. So there's so many things that are really a strong benefit and help to our culture and our society, right? And then the threats, there's a lot, right? And this is the thing that we'll wrap up with. But the threats are pretty extensive. We clear them to rice paddies. They're logged. Fish farming is the fastest growing food production. And so that is killing a lot of the mangroves. Pollution. Their aerial roots can be blocked by sediment and waste and oils. And then development, right? Building buildings along the coast. It's highly profitable. Climate change is causing a changing habitat, shifting habitat. And so we have 35% have been lost from 1980 to 2000. And that's losing about 150,000 football fields annually and 4 times higher than the overall global forest loss. So it's happening really quickly, and it's a crucial part of our planet's health, right? All right, here's the practice FRQ, so practice writing this out. And you describe how one specific human activity can lead to increased phosphorus levels in an estuary ecosystem, and describe one step that could be taken to reduce the phosphorus inputs from the activity you described above. All right, good luck. See you soon.